Brahma chaloka tipati saham pati katanjali anadiwarang ayachata satida sata parajaka jatika de se tu dhammang anukampimang pajang.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang gunottaram upachayam namassami. Kalena dhamma savanam nyetam mangalam uttamanti. With Rupa's permission and the permission of my dear Dhamma brothers, I'd like to welcome you all again. This afternoon is going to be a slightly different afternoon. And it's called Story Time at the Sarana. So it's a great honor to be sharing a few thoughts in Lumpur's presence. I'm delighted and at the same time a little nervous. Pretty cool. But no, it is an occasion, and it's an occasion where we think of and recollect the goodness that has existed in this universe for the past 2,500 years. This goodness that comes to us in the form of the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. And this is the month of Visakha, which is a very, very special month in India. I was born and raised in India. And it's a very special month, not just in the Buddhist calendar, but it's very special in the Hindu calendar, in the Jain calendar, in the Sikh calendar. Most of the Indic religions have some kind of festival or another during the month of Visakha. Well, actually in India we have festivals all the time. Look at Google, which I did this morning, and I typed in which country in the world has the maximum number of festivals. It was India. So we have 42 holidays in a year, 42 festivals. Right? And so the word festival in Sanskrit is Utsava, and in Pali is Ussava. And it's made up of two words, Ut, which means to lift up, to energize. Sava are from the troubles of the world. So this is an occasion where we lift ourselves up from the usual kind of vicissitudes that we face and the kind of problems and the drudgery of day-to-day life. We come together, we actually lift ourselves up. And like Lumpur did so beautifully this morning, we listened to the Dhamma, and then we sat and we engaged in meditation, bhavana. And so now in the afternoon we'll do something a little different. We will listen to stories. And stories are very important, especially in a spiritual setting or in a religious setting. Because stories basically have three types of information. One is historical. Right? The other is a mythological kind of sense that they bring. And the third is the sense of Dhamma, the sense of devotion, the sense of wonder that they bring along as well. And generally, we tend to focus more on the historical aspect. Right? Is this what really happened? Is this accurate? Is this right? Is this wrong? Can it have happened really? It sounds so unbelievable. So we tend to look at it in a manner that's quite linear, right? And binary as well. And that makes it a little dry. Makes it like dry toast. Now I like my toast with butter and marmalade. So along with the historical aspect, I just enjoy the mythology, and I enjoy the devotion, and I enjoy the spirituality. So I thought, we could do a little bit of that, and Lopo said, yeah, go for it. So as we are considering these stories, it is amazing because all these stories are always accompanied by the spirit of virtue, honesty, truth, goodness, and at the same time always directed towards transcendence, always directed towards release, freedom, and like Lupa said this morning, silence, the open heart. So it's not just entertainment, but it's entertainment with a purpose, and the ultimate, the highest purpose, which is freedom of the heart, which is release. So before we kind of go in to the specifics of Visakha Puja, which are the specific stories of the Lord Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and Pari-Nibanna, I thought it would be useful to kind of look at how the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha are actually portrayed. Right? And we are very familiar with this. Anyone who's been coming to monasteries, everyone knows this, but this is a good occasion to remind ourselves of it. So the backstory is that the Venerable Sariputta, who is the Buddha's, he's called the Dhamma Senapati, like he's the marshal of the Dhamma. Right? The Buddha himself says that if I have said something, Sariputta can explain it much better. Right? So that's the kind of seal of approval, the imprimatur that Sariputta gets from the Buddha. So Sariputta was born in a Brahmin family, and even though he becomes so revered and venerated in the Sangha, his mother really does not buy in to his following the Buddha. Right? So his mother kind of believes that Sariputta has let the Brahmin side down, right? And is always kind of denigrating him. Oh, your shaven head. What are you doing walking around with mendicants? We come from such a wealthy family. We have so much status. You shouldn't be doing all this. Right? And I can relate because some of my relatives tell me that. So, not that I care, but some of them do, right? It's a big deal. So Sariputta's life is coming to an end, and then he says, okay, I'm going to pass away in my own village, and if possible, I would like to teach my mother the Dhamma and get her to understand the Buddha's teachings, and by doing so, her heart will open and she will enjoy the release of freedom. So he goes, and as usual, receives a very frosty kind of dismissive welcome from his mother. But he's staying in his house and all his students are staying with him. And the mother's watching what's going on, and she doesn't have much respect for whatever, okay, he's here. So he's there, and she notices that as Sariputta is in his room kind of meditating, all the gods that she venerates from her kind of Vedic, Brahminical upbringing, all of these deities are coming and bowing down to Sariputta. So she sees Indra, the king of the Devas, coming and bowing down and paying obeisance to Sariputta. She sees the Chatur Maharajika, the four great kings of the heavenly realms, coming down, bowing down to Sariputta, paying respects. So, but each of these things happening, she's getting a little more impressed. Wow, okay, not bad, not bad. Final thing that happens is that the deity she venerates, Mahabrahma, Brahma, the Brahma Devata, he comes himself. And Sariputta's mother has been worshipping this particular deity all her life. And she sees him, wow, Brahma's come. And then he goes and pays respects to Sariputta. Now she's sold. I've been paying respects to this deity all my life, never have I had a glimpse of him. Here he's coming and bowing down to you. What's your secret? Sariputta says, well, he's not bowing down to me. He's bowing down to the teachings of the Buddha. So now, kind of, there's hope, there's dawn in the mother's heart. And she says, okay, please teach me, let me learn. So then Sariputta recites the sutta called the Dajjagga Parita. And this is the Itipiso Bhagava Araham chant that we do on all special occasions. This is also called the Triratna Guna, the qualities of the three jewels. It's the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And it's called the Dajjagga because it is the standard. So when you look at a chariot always has a flag on top. Kind of like how when King Charles, he has a flag on his Rolls Royce, or whatever car he uses. The same way, each chariot has a Dajjagga. So this is the topmost thing on the chariot. So something that's kept at a very high level, which is extremely venerated, which is extremely respected. It's the standard. So this parita is called the Dajjagga Parita. So it goes like this: Iti Piso Bhagava Arama. So the first section talks of the Buddha, second of the Dhamma, third of the Sangha. So I thought we'd just kind of quickly go over that so we get a sense of what we are honoring and a sense of what we are coming here to celebrate today and venerate and respect. So Iti Piso Bhagava. It is thus Bhagava. That's another name for the Buddha. And Bhagava is usually translated as Lord. But Bhagava, Bhagga Eva, so someone who drives away. And what does this person drive away? Bhagga Ragoti Bhagava, Bhagga Mohoti Bhagava, Bhagga Dosoti Bhagava. So he's the one who drives away Raga, which is greed, lust, sensuality, Dosa, a sense of aversion, and Moha, this delusion that we're all kind of caught up in. So he drives all these things away. Araham, again we've heard this word a lot, Araham, Ari or Arahant as we say. But it's Ari and Ham. Ari are the enemies that we carry inside. Enemies or kind of our mind states, moods of the mind, our judgments, all these things that are not really helpful, like how Paul was saying this morning, like all these conceits that we carry. Conceit that I'm either really good or the conceit that I'm really lousy. Both are conceits, right? And so, Ham, he has ended all these things. Arahant. Samma Sambuddha. He is the completely enlightened. So Samma is Samyak, complete, whole, total. Bodhi, enlightenment, he's woken up, he's awake. So Samma Sambodhi, someone who's completely and fully awakened. Vidya Charana Sampanna. So Vidya is usually called knowledge, but it is actually the ending of ignorance. Right? So there's no ignorance present here. And it's not enough if ignorance ends. This ending of ignorance then has to find expression in the way one behaves. So acharana. So vidya, charana, sampanna. He's an expert. Right? He knows this so well. He's the master. So there's absolutely no ignorance, which is expressed as vidya or vidya. And acharana, his conduct, is perfect, impeccable in conduct and understanding. Sugato, so gati is like a refuge. And so Lopar always keeps saying, the sarana should be like a refuge for everyone. It's a place where we come and we kind of, in a sense, leave all our cares behind. We plug into something that's bigger and we recharge, we connect. That is a gati. So sarana is one word, gati is another word. And sugati, so he has reached that destination that's the best. Loka vidu, he knows, not only knows what's going on, but vidu, he can actually feel it. He is empathetic, he's compassionate, he's connected. And what's he connected to? So he's connected anuttara, in a very excellent way, in a very superior way, in a manner that is incomparable. And so what's he connected to in a manner that's incomparable? He's connected to the Purisa Dhammas. He's connected to the world, he's connected to people. And not only that, he trains them. So if there's a chariot, he's the charioteer. Purisa Dhamma Sarati, Saptha, he's the teacher. And of whom? Of Deva and Manusa. So again, like we were hearing this morning, it's not that the Buddha had this kind of enlightenment and he wanted to keep it to himself. He wants to share it with the world. Right? And that's the opportunity that we get. Satta Deva Manusa, so Deva to all the celestial beings and to all the human beings. Buddho Bhagavati, this is who we call the Buddha. And then it goes on to talk about his teachings where it says Swakato, very well taught. And every day when we do our chanting, in the morning chanting and in the evening chanting, we are reminded as to how the Buddha actually taught. It says, Deseti Dhammam, Adi Kalyanam, Madhye Kalyanam, Pariyosana Kalyanam. This Dhamma that he's taught is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. Which means that it's completely beneficial. Right? Totally, fully beneficial. And it's Sahtam Sabhyanjanam, Kevala Paripurnam, Kevala Parisuddham. So, in the way he expresses his teaching and the meaning it conveys, nothing has to be removed, nothing has to be added. So it's a complete, holistic teaching. So Swakato Bhagavata Dhamma. Sanditiko, you can see it manifest. Right? So when we listen to Dhamma talks and we take a sutta and we read and we recollect kind of this relationship between cause and effect, we can see it manifesting in front of us. Sanditiko, Akaliko. What was pertinent at the time of the Buddha is still pertinent now. What was pertinent at the time of all the previous Buddhas, which is incalculable number of eons before him, still pertinent now. Akaliko. Ehipasiko. It invites us. It creates a sense of curiosity. Ehipasiko. Come and see. Upanayiko or Upanayiko, draws us inwards. It's not just something that you read in a book. Upanayiko, it really, you want to go and sit right next to it. Right? That's actual meaning of Upanayika or Upanayika, where you want to go close. You want to be close. Pachattam veditam bho vinyuhi. Pachattam, pratyaksham. It is something that you can feel through your senses. It is something that we can feel through our hearts. It's something that we can really kind of submerge ourselves in. It's not something that's just intellectual that we know and we forget about. It's not, to borrow Lumpur's words, it's not an intellectual artifact. Pachattam veditapo. And so we can feel it. Vedana. We feel it. We sense it. It's not something that's removed. And because of that, vinyuhi, a kind of wisdom, a kind of insight arises. Right? So that's the speciality of the Buddha's teaching. Then Sariputta tells his mother about the Sangha. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho. So Savaka, or the Savaka Sangha, Sangha is a collection of people. Right? Like we have the monastic Sangha, and there's the lay Sangha, and together we form a Sangha, we form a collection of people. But Savaka Sangha is a collection of people who are striving, moving towards the same goal. So striving not in a way of kind of gritting your teeth and I've got to do this, or, none of that willful, but a kind of moving in the same direction. It's very harmonious, it's very gentle. Savaka, it's almost a commitment more than a willful kind of exertion. So that's the Savaka Sangha. Supatipanno. Patipanna is, pati is towards, panna is to walk. So we're walking towards something. Supatipanno, we're walking towards something that's good. We are moving towards something that's good. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho. Uju Patipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho. So Uju comes from the same root of the word, we said that the word festival is Usaha and Ussava, Ut and Sava. Ut is to lift ourselves up, right? So that's what we do with our practice. Our practice is constantly moving towards lifting ourselves up, right? There's a sincerity there, there's an integrity there, there's a fidelity there. And the movement is always, okay, if I'm feeling low, what can I do to feel better? Right? How can I lift myself up? Not just for myself, but for everyone around me, for the benefit of everyone around me. So Ujupatipanno, someone who is committed to upliftment. Nyayapatipanno, someone who has taken on this endeavor in a manner that's fitting, that's proper, and that's appropriate. We'll talk a little bit about this when we talk about the enlightenment, the night of the enlightenment. But Nyaya, something that is appropriate, skillful, right, it fits well, it feels right, it's not strained, it's not a high level of exertion. Nyaya Patipanno, Samichi Patipanno, something that is appropriate, and something that is relevant. So it has to be relevant. So it's not as if I have to sit and watch my breath because I have to sit and watch my breath. But why is that relevant? That kind of investigation, that kind of curiosity, the courage to kind of say, this is what's going on in my heart right now, and what can I do to make it better? What is it that I can employ that's going to lift me out of this? Yadidam Chattari Purisa Yugani. And that's how this group works. This group of the fourfold Sangha, which is bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, lay people. So monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen. Chattari Purisa Yugani, Atta Purisa Puja. So in these four groups of monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen, some of them are still on the path, and some of them have already reached the goal. Right? So right here, is I like to look at this and kind of recollect that, this idea that lay people can never be fully enlightened doesn't ring true, because the Buddha himself says, Atta Purisa Pukala. Monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen, some of them are on the path, some of them have already finished with the journey. Atta Purisa Pukala, Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho. Okay, so then what do we do? So there are these collections, there is this group of people, so they're worthy of being invited. Right? So when we come across these worthy individuals, we have to make the invitation so that they can enter our hearts, enter our lives, and we form a rapport, we form a relationship, ahunayo, pahunayo. Having done that, having allowed them to come into our lives, then we have to accord them the proper hospitality, the proper kind of means by which they're comfortable being there. Ahunayo, pahunayo, dakkinayo, all the time paying respects, all the time kind of holding them with a sense of reverence. So dakina actually means to keep to your right. And in the Indian tradition, if you keep something to the right side of your body, it's a veneration. Right? So dakinayo, and anjana, worthy of paying respects. So this is how Sariputta kind of illustrates the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha to his mother. And now his mother is completely convinced, and the story goes that, she gets the full benefit of this teaching and experiences release of the heart, and all's well that ends well. So then we come to, now that we've spoken about the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha, we come to the actual kind of Visakha Puja, which celebrates the birth, the story of the enlightenment, and the Pari-Nibanna of the Buddha, final cessation of the mortal coil, the bodily form of the Buddha. So generally, if you look at some of the sources of the suttas, the sources that are present in the suttas, right, it presents a certain picture, but then there are other sources as well, which is called the Nidana Katha, which is found in the Jataka tales. Then another source is called the Buddha Vamsa, which is found in the Buddhaka Nikaya. And then you have the whole range of Sanskrit works, which is like the Lalita Vistara, the Buddha Charitra by the Pushpa. All of these wonderful sources that kind of enlarge and enrich the stories somewhat. So this mythological aspect, this aspect of wow, this aspect of this wonder that takes us to silence. All that is found in more of these kind of sources. So these stories that I would like to kind of share they're mixed from the suttas as well as from these sources. Right? But going back in time, in the Nidana Katha, there are many lifetimes of the Buddha that are described. So he's the Bodhisattva, and he is on his journey to enlightenment, and this process, according to the stories, takes a bit of time. So many, many lifetimes of the Buddha are described. The first story of the Buddha that is described happens of this particular Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, actually happens during the lifetime of a previous Buddha called Dipankara. So Dipankara is the Buddha in the past, and he's entering a city, and as he enters the city, there's a little stream and there's a puddle, and he has to cross the puddle. So just then, there is this ascetic who comes and prostrates himself across the puddle and says, "Please use my body as a bridge. Walk across. I don't want the Buddha's feet to get muddied." Right? So Dipankara is kind of amazed at the level of devotion that this ascetic is displaying, and he blesses this disciple, this ascetic, and he says, "You will be a future Buddha." Now wait for it. What is the name of this ascetic? Sumedha. That's right, like our very own Rupa Sumedha. And the city in which this happens? Amaravati. So the story goes that after a few years of establishing Amarasiri, Ajahn Amaro is on a walk with Lupo Sumedo, and Ajahn Amaro has just read the story, right? So he asks Lupo Sumedo, "Oh Lupo, I just read the story about Sumeda at Amaravati with Dipankara Buddha. Is that why you named this monastery Amaravati?" So apparently Lupo Sumedo kind of paused for a moment, and the blood drained from his face, and he said, I never thought of that. So it's a lovely coincidence, but it's also very plausible. And whenever I think of Lupo Sumedo or I think of the story, every pore just kind of reverberates with a sense of devotion, a sense of wonder, a sense of delight, a deep sense of blessing. Right? So then what happens is there are many more lifetimes and many more stories. But to cut a long story short, we then come to the birth of this particular Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. And like Lupo was mentioning this morning, the Buddha's birth has many kind of fascinating aspects to it. And it's explained in the sutta called the Acharya Buddha Sutta. Acharya means amazing, right? It creates a sense of amazement. Abhuta is a sense of wonder, right? So it takes our heart to a place that's like, wow, right? And that's how this sutta is. And Ananda is kind of like me, kind of a little overly devotional. So all of these things are amazing. Wow, the Buddha did this. And wow, the Buddha did that. And Buddha is kind of like Lupo. Just calm down. Settle down. Says, yeah. Although these are wonderful and marvelous, a really amazing quality of the Tathagata, of the Buddha, is that he knows sensations, Vedana, he knows perceptions, Sanya, and he knows thoughts, Vitaka, as they arise. He knows them as they exist, and he knows them as they pass away. And that's a miracle, that's wonderful, that's marvelous. Right? But going back to the other aspect, the kind of wonderful, amazing aspect. So just before, so right after conception, the Buddha's mother, Mahamaya, experiences a dream. And in her dream, she sees this white elephant with 6 tusks that comes and enters her womb. So it's important. It's a sign that something very auspicious is going to happen. And if you read Stillness Flowing, there's an account of all the dreams that Lupucha's mother had when she was carrying Lupucha. Amazing. It's the same story repeated 25 centuries later. And so then she knows, okay, I'm carrying something very, very special. And as her pregnancy continues, she has absolutely none of the discomfort that apparently accompanies pregnancy. So she has no morning sickness, she has no aches and pains. She is able to, at will, summon up all these pleasant, relaxing, calming states of body and mind that leave her refreshed all the time. Right? And she's constantly able to, this sense of uju, she's able to tap into that. Right? Constantly pulling herself up, brightening her mind all the time. And as the pregnancy continues, it's all very smooth. Then she's on the journey to her father's house so that she can give birth. And halfway through, in a place called Lumbini, so they are living in a place called Kapilavastu, and all these cities are still there today. And from Kapilavastu, she has to go to wherever her father's house is. Midway is this point called Lumbini. So as she approaches Lumbini, it's time for the delivery. So she stops the caravan, she gets out, and in this sutta it describes how generally mothers give birth either sitting down or lying down. But Mahamaya actually gives birth standing up. And as the Buddha comes into the world, all of the devas come and receive him. Right? And instantly, from the sky, these jets of warm and cool water come, they mix, they mingle, and it's a very lovely warm temperature, and that's the water that bathes the Buddha. Then as the devas lead him down, his feet touch the ground, there are lotuses that come up. From the bare ground, not even from water. So yeah, it sounds fanciful, but it also sounds amazing. I mean, I love these kind of stories. So he takes 7 steps, and as he takes 7 steps, he's now able to walk, he's now able to talk, so he puts his finger up and says, I am the foremost. Right? I am the Buddha. There's no more coming back for me. So that is the kind of wonderful aspect of the Buddha's birth. And then there's a bit of a pause in the story, and obviously he's a prince of this fairly kind of prosperous kingdom, which is the foothills of the Himalayas. So he would have been taught all of these things that princes were taught at the time. So probably logic and a little bit of mathematics and archery and swordsmanship and how to ride a horse and how to ride a chariot, and all of that he would have learned. Right? And then there's one particular sutta called the Sukhamala Sutta, where he describes his life. So then when he's born, his parents invite a few soothsayers and a few fortune tellers and a few venerated ascetics to come and read what the future holds for the Buddha. General consensus is that, this is a pretty special being. So if he continues as a king, he's going to be a world-ruling monarch. So immediately Suddhodana, the Buddha's father, is delighted and thrilled. Wow, okay, the kingdom's going to expand. And that's what I need. I need a son who's going to take this forward. Or he's going to be the king of all ascetics. Muniraja, Saddharma Muniraja. And he will teach the Dhamma that is absolutely incomparable. Hearing that, Suddhodana is not really, well, the first choice, yeah, of course, bring it on. The second choice, not really. I don't want my son to run off as some ascetic, and who's going to take care of the kingdom, who's going to take care of all of this, and who's going to take my responsibilities? So that's not. So Suddhodana says, I've got to make sure that the latter doesn't happen, and I've got to make sure that the former happens. So his kind of strategy or direction is to surround the Buddha with every possible luxury, that his mind does not leave the pleasure realm, does not leave this realm of delight, pleasure, and hence he wants the Buddha to he wants Siddhartha to kind of get more and more of it. So the Buddha describes, my father constructed 3 palaces for me. 1 palace for the winter season, 1 palace for the summer season, and 1 palace for the rainy season. Okay? And he describes it. So apparently, the palace in the winter season is called Ramya, which means attractive, and this is actually built underneath the frost cloud. Quite an interesting detail, right? So this palace always remains warm. However cold it is outside, because this palace is constructed under the frost light, it remains warm. And then all the walls are painted in hues of orange and warm colors, the big large fireplaces, all the furnishings are kind of upholstered with wool, so everything's very warm, very comfortable. The summer palace is called Suramya, even more attractive. And this is placed on the top of a hill, and it's constructed in such a way that cooling breezes waft in and waft out. And Suddhodana surrounds this palace with 3 lotus ponds. 1 lotus pond for red lotuses, 1 for white lotuses, and the other for blue lotuses. Right? It's something that's really kind of special and exotic, and all the surfaces that are there in the palace are surfaces that retain coolness. So there's white marble, and there's crystal, and there's beryl, and all these things that retain coolness. Right? So in the summer, the Buddha is never affected by heat. Then the palace that's there in the rainy season, it's called Shubha. And this palace is so beautiful, everything is of the finest quality, and the Buddha has all kinds of entertainment. Right? Netflix on demand, 2,500 years ago. So he has all these dancing girls and these minstrels and musicians and magicians and all, and he just doesn't have to leave the palace. And he describes how his father is so intent on giving him a beautiful picture that even the people who are attending to him, his attendants and his servants, they wear the finest clothes and they fed the finest foods and things like that. And he talks about the only things that would touch his body are the purest water and the best quality sandalwood that comes from Benares, that comes from Varanasi. And the clothes that he used to wear, finest silk that comes from Benares. Right? His turban, his upper robe, his lower robe, outer robe, all these are of the finest silks. And kind of like using Bulgari toiletries and a sable robe suit. Right? Kind of comparison like that. So this is his lifestyle. Right? And then, of course, we hear the story of how he goes out and he sees the 4 heavenly messengers. Now, actually speaking, in the suttas, there's one sutta called the Mahapadana Sutta, where the Buddha describes this story in great detail and says, this doesn't happen to me, but this happens to the Buddha Vipassi. So it's a good story, it's a convenient story, but it's just been kind of plugged in. So, in his own description, what he says is, I was in the palace during the rainy season, and I'm being entertained by this amazing kind of dance show, and I just fell asleep. Right? And I woke up, and when I woke up, the show was over, and all these people who are participating in, all these dancing girls, they were tired and they're resting, so they're lying down and they look disheveled, their hair is out of place and their robes are kind of messy, and some of them are snoring, some of them are grinding their teeth, and some of them are drooling. So not the kind of sight that's particularly impressive. Right? So the Buddha looks at this, and there's a little bit of disgust that fills him. And he says in the sutta, why is it when I am subject to old age, sickness and death, why is it that I'm constantly running after things that are also subject to old age, sickness and death? Where's the release from this? So I have to go and find the deathless. I have to go and find whatever is not unaging, whatever is not aging, whatever is unaging, whatever is unailing, the deathless. Right? So that is the impetus that pushes him. And he goes on. And again, this kind of story that he sneaks away in the dark of the night, leaving behind his wife Yashodhara and his son Rahula, with Chana the charioteer. Again, according to the Buddha's own account, that's not quite factual. So in the Mahapadana Sutta, the Buddha actually states, it was a protracted negotiation with my parents. I had to convince them, right? And they weren't really convinced, but I still had to go, right? So I told them, I said, look, I've gotten married the way you wanted me to get married. I've provided you with an A, right? Now I need to go. I need to go and find the deathless. Not just for my benefit, but for the benefit of all sentient beings, right? For your benefit too. So the sutta describes how he removes all his royal clothes and wears the kashaya, which is the robes of a monk, shaves off his hair and shaves off his head. And his parents, they're watching all this with tear-filled eyes. Right? So that's the account in the suttas. There are other stories, kind of more popular, more romantic, but this is what the Buddha says. It was a protracted negotiation. I just didn't leave everything and run off. And then so when this happens, and the Buddha comes to this realization that if I'm subject to all of these conditions, why do I run after things that are also subject to all these conditions? Because this isn't going to satisfy me. He then chants a beautiful Pali verse, and that's the verse in our tradition when aspirants become anagarikas. That is the verse we chant. Sambhado garava soga jopato ajo kaso pagaja naidam sugaram agaram ajavasada ekanta paripurnam ekanta parisuddham brahmacharyam charitum yanunaham kesamasum aharitva kasayani vatani achadetva agarasma anagariyam pagajayam. So he says the home life is kind of cramped. It's dusty. It's full of problems, right? If I leave this kind of existence and I walk out, then I walk out into freedom, right? It's free. It's as free as the open sky. Ajoka so pabaja. So if I leave everything and walk out, there's freedom. So it's not possible to search for the unailing, the unaging, the deathless, being in the midst of all of these problems. So I can't live a life with my wife and with my child and with my parents and with the kingdom and with this and with that and handling this issue and that issue. I can't really find the deathless. Right? So if I have to do it, I have to leave and go. So that's the motivation that pushes him to leave the homeless life and get into a life of seclusion, probably a life of contemplation, a life of reflection. And that's what he does. So he goes in search. And another beautiful story is that as he's walking, he reaches this place called Rajgir. And Rajgir is the capital of King Bimbisara. King Bimbisara again comes in the Buddhist text many, many times. He is a very, very ardent devotee and a very generous supporter of the Buddha. So Bimbisara's spies come and tell him, there's this new mendicant who's entered our city, and he looks so bright, and his complexion he looks so relaxed, and he's so pleasing to look at, and wherever he goes, people are just filling up his bowl, right? And this is amazing to watch. So Bimbisara says, okay, I must go and see this. So he follows the Buddha and he goes to the Buddha, and he actually sees for himself, and he says, wow, this is amazing. You look like a prince. Who are you? So the Buddha says, well, I'm so-and-so, and I come from this place. And so Bimbisara immediately says, well, why don't you just stay here? Take half my kingdom. I'll give you half of my kingdom. You stay here and we'll make this bigger and better and richer, and we'll get into a good partnership. Again, the Buddha says, no thanks. I could have done this with my dad. There's a reason why I left. So he thanks Bimbisara. Then Bimbisara actually lays down a condition. He says, okay, once you found the deathless, I want you to come back. Right? And I will make you a gift, and you must accept that gift. And so the Buddha does. He goes, he gets enlightened and comes back. And that's when Bimbisara offers him the first plot of land, which is Veluwana, where the Buddha establishes his first monastery, which is in Rajgir. So, very, very kind of touching story. So Buddha leaves Rajgir, goes in search of a teacher, finds a couple of teachers, Alara Kalarma, Uttarakarama Putra, and they teach him everything they know, and he's a quick learner, so he learns all of this, and both of them tell him independently, okay, now you've learned everything we know, we can't teach you anything more, why don't you stay on as my co-teacher, and then we'll take care of the community. The Buddha says, well, not quite, because this isn't all of it. I get part of the picture, but there's more to it, and I need to explore. So, thank you very much, but off I go. So he goes. And then there's this description of 6 years in which he's engaged in ascetic practices, and he himself calls it dukkha charita, walking on the path of dukkha. So he says, okay, I've tried this, all these teachings from Ramaputta and Alarakalama, nothing seems to work. So now I'm going to go and really join the school of thought where it says the more pain you have, the more you torture yourself, the more results you're going to get. Okay? So that's what he does. He goes and he's eating 1 grain of rice a day. He says he reaches such an emaciated state that if he touched the front of his chest, he could feel his spine. Like, that's how thin he was. He was literally skin and bone. And he was totally malnourished. And every time he tried to get up, he'd fall down. All the time dizzy. And he says that if he were to rub his skin, or rub his hand, all the skin and all the hair would just flake off. Right? So that's the level of asceticism he's putting himself through. And he's doing this for 6 years, and he's kind of beginning to realize this is not working. Okay, I've been doing this, I've invested a lot into this, but somehow this is not giving me the results I need. So again, a beautiful, beautiful lesson. Right? Like, he has the mental agility, and the humility to say, oops, maybe this doesn't work. Maybe I've got to do something else. Right? So then he decides, what do I do? So again, the Theravada account, the account in the suttas, is that at that point when he says, okay, all the self-mortification isn't working, what do I do? He then recounts something that happened in the past when he was about 6 or 7 years old. There's the ploughing ceremony. His father and all the townsmen are busy in the ploughing ceremony. Now he's a kid, he's not interested in any of this. He just runs off and sits at the foot of a rose apple tree. And all he does is he just sits and closes his eyes and kind of starts experiencing a very relaxed state of being. A state of being that feels calm, that feels centered, that feels steady, that feels satiated, that feels happy, and it actually feels quite pleasant, quite pleasurable. So, according to the Theravadan accounts, the Buddha then asks himself, why am I afraid of this kind of pleasure? This kind of pleasure is wholesome, it's beneficial. Why am I running away from it? What is the need for me to go through and experience all of this self-mortification? Right? Then he decides, okay, now I've got to do something that's the middle path. Right? So the Mahayana version, the Tibetan version, is at that time he hears someone playing the veena. So the Theravada version, this comes in another part of the canon, but here apparently he hears someone playing the veena, which is a stringed instrument, like a sitar, and he comes to the realization that the string is too tight, it's going to break. If it's too loose, it's not going to hit the right pitch. So the amount of tension has to be just right. Similarly, in this endeavor, in this holy life, if I'm going to be too strict with myself, I'm not going to be able to sustain it. I'm going to snap. and nothing feels right here. My nerves feel taut, my skin is flaky, and I'm always on edge and kind of holding on to dear life, so this isn't working. The way I was living in all these pleasure palaces, the string was too loose, so I wasn't able to hit the right note. So now I must find the right tension. Right? So then, this is the account in the Buddha Charitra of Ashwagosha, that the sound of this veena tells him that he had to find the middle way. But in the Theravadan accounts, it's his own reason, right? So why am I running away from this pleasure? Why am I indulging in self-mortification? So I've got to go and find. So he decides, okay, I've got to start living normally, I've got to start eating properly. So just then, as he's sitting there and waiting, there's this, now we kind of go off on a side story, right? There's this lady called Sujata. And Sujata comes from this village, which is about 2 kilometers away from Bodh Gaya. And this is called Pari-Nibanna. And her father is quite well off, and he has a lot of lands, and he has a lot of cattle. So what she does is, every year, on the full moon of the month of Visakha, she makes a very special offering. And she takes it and offers it to this tree deva, this god who resides in this particular tree. It so happens that the Buddha was sitting under that tree. Right? And the description of the way she makes this is absolutely fantastic. Bear with me here, because there is a model to this. There's a method to the madness. So apparently, she takes the milk from 1,000 cows, and then she feeds that to 500 cows. She takes the milk of those 500, feeds that to 250 cows. Then she takes the milk of those 250, feeds it to 125, and then 125 to 64, 64 to 32, 32 to 16, and finally the last 8. And by the time she gets the milk from this last 8 cows, this milk is absolutely of the highest quality, it's the most nutritious, it's the best kind of quality milk that you can get, right? And so this is the amount of enthusiasm, this is the amount of dedication, this is the amount of commitment. And so then she takes the milk from these 8 cows and she boils it with a very special kind of rice, which is green rice. That is, the husk hasn't formed yet, right? It's young rice. It's very tasty. So this dessert is made in India even today. Not with 1,000 cows, just with regular milk, right? So she then takes the milk from these cows and she puts it into a new pot and she puts it on the fire. Now all the celestial beings that are watching are so attracted by her enthusiasm. They're so delighted by her commitment, her saddha, her bhakti, that they all come and want to participate. So as she's cooking this milk, Brahma God comes and holds a white parasol over it. Indra, the king of the devas, comes and protects the fire. And then the 4 great heavenly kings come with their swords and with their weapons, and they stand guard on all the 4 directions. Then all the Gandharvas and Yakshas fly off to these distant lands and go to these high mountains and collect all these wonderful herbs and spices and nuts and fruits, and all that is added to this milk. And then when this milk is ready, she then takes a beautiful golden vessel which is studded in precious stones, and she pours it into that vessel, covers it with a golden lid, and ties it with a square of spotless white silk from Benares, puts it on her head and carries it to offer to the tree god. Right? Now, this I found absolutely fascinating. So, as some of you know, I have a lot of health issues, right? So I can't spend a lot of time sitting and meditating. So this actually helped me create my own meditation. So when I have these long nights where I can't sleep and where I'm trying to just observe the pain, you do that, you observe pain for 45 minutes, for an hour. After that, you just, it's just not working, right? It's painful, I'm exhausted, I'm bored, I'm tired. I need to find a sense of uplift. So then I started using this technique. So in my mind, I imagine that I'm inviting Lumpur for a meal. I actually do this, honestly. Because when I was a layperson, I used to love entertaining, right? I used to love calling people over, I used to love cooking. So that's one thing I miss as a monk. I can't cook and I can't serve people the food I cook. So this is how I meditate. At night, when it's around 1:30, 2 o'clock, and there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of discomfort, and I'm tempted to use 4-letter expletives, and I say, no. So then I lie down, I'm lying down and I imagine I'm inviting Lumpur for lunch. So I go into it with a great amount of detail. So I find the perfect table, the perfect chair, and then I find a tablecloth which is made of the best quality linen, this beautiful flower vase, and I put some nice roses in it, and I visualize gold-rimmed crockery and beautiful gold-plated cutlery. And then Lumpur comes in and he sits down, and there's crystal glassware for water. As monks, we can't serve wine. Anyway, beautiful glassware. Lumpur comes and sits, and I serve this food that I've cooked. And I've worked out the menu beforehand, so I know what the courses are, and I know what the dessert is going to be, and I know what the cheeses are going to be, etc., etc. And then I stop, and then I feel my body. And the pain is considerably reduced. And I feel relaxed. It just lifts me up. Right? And I've been doing this for many, many years. I don't mean to embarrass you, but it works. So that's the suggestion, right? Like for me, that's my go-to. So if your go-to is music, right? And you want to meditate and things are really difficult, things are really uncomfortable, you have a lot of pain, lie down and think of playing music with someone who you really love and respect. Right? Whatever your hobby is, right? Imagine, visualize you're doing it with someone who means the world to you. Someone who you really care about, someone who you really love and respect. And then come down to the body. And then feel how open the heart is, and how just the amount of release and relief that one is able to feel. So anyway, back to the story. Sujata does this, and she carries this, and she offers this to the Buddha. The Buddha eats it, and this is the morning of the full moon of Visakha Puja. He gets the sustenance that he needs to carry on with his work. So as soon as the Buddha is eating this, there are 5 other companions who are with him. And they feel kind of let down. Oh gosh, this guy's lost his way. He's no longer doing all these ascetic practices. I mean, it's fine for him, he's a prince. If he gives this up, he can always go and sit on his father's throne. We don't have that option. For us, it's this or nothing. So let's not follow him anymore. So they leave him and they go off to Sarnath, and they're sitting there and they're meditating and following their thing. And the Buddha is actually now feeling quite refreshed. He's eaten this wonderful meal, his body feels relaxed. He goes to the Niranjana river, has a dip, he bathes. Then it's just about time in the evening. It's a beautiful evening. It's cool. There's bird song. The moon is just kind of coming up, and he makes a determination. Okay, now tonight's the night. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to find the deathless. And there is a story where Lumpur says, Well, the Buddha could actually do it because he had the spiritual backup. Right? He had the wherewithal to say, I'm going to sit down and right through the night, even if my bones turn to dust, I don't care, I'm going to find the deathless. Right? But if someone who doesn't have that spiritual backup tries doing something like that, or tries attempting a determination like that, the results aren't going to be very good. So the example that Guru Cha used apparently was that you want to buy a car and you go to the market with 15 baht in your pocket. You're not going to buy the car. So anyway, this is the Buddha's resolve. So he sits under the Bodhi tree. And again, the canonical representation, which appears in the Pari-Nibanna Sutta, is that during the first watch of the night, he's able to recount all of his past lives. During the second watch of the night, he's able to recount the lives of all sentient beings, and he's able to understand the law of cause and effect. Then during the last watch of the night, he's able to understand, express, almost formulate the Four Noble Truths. Right? That's the Sutta interpretation, the Sutta description. And it's very, very useful because this kind of maps to our own experience. Right? So we can look at our actions, right? We can understand what we've done in the past. Right? We can apply cause and effect to what has happened. Then we can understand, look at it through the prism or through the lens of the Four Noble Truths. But then the mythological description of the story is also fantastic. Right? So this is where the Buddha is sitting, the first watch of the night, and the Buddha's kind of arch nemesis, Mara. The Buddha is the awakened one. Mara means death. Literally, Mara means death. So Mara is the lord of death. He's the exact opposite to awakening, exact opposite to enlightenment. Again, this is a mythological representation. Right? So then Mara now feels threatened. Oh my God, if there is a fully enlightened teacher that's going to come into this world, then I'm going to be out of business. Right? My work is going to be tough. So I've got to distract him. I should make sure that this does not happen. So then what he does is, as Buddha is sitting there, the first watch of the night, he sends his 3 daughters. Right? They are called Arati, Tanha and Papa. And the 3 daughters, what they do is they conjure up all these brilliant, beautiful visions, right? Exotic colors, exotic landscapes, beautiful human forms, very alluring, very enthralling. All of these kind of flash through the Buddha's field of vision. And he just doesn't react. And again, this is important. The meaning, so the 3 daughters of Buddha are actually Arati, which means, it means distraction, but it also means a state in which our heart cannot delight. Right? There's a constant lack of something that's perceived. Tanha is this thirst, is a kind of craving. And raga is this allure that comes out of satisfying that craving. Right? So we can see arati in our own lives is when we are absolutely bored and we reach out for our iPhone or for our tablet. Right? Tanha is, I've got to get this thing on Amazon, or I've got to get this, or I've got to get that, or whatever. Right? And raga is the kind of either the satisfaction that falls out of it or buyer's remorse. Either way, both are described as raga. It was very pertinent how boredom enters the mind, a sense of lack enters the mind, pushes us into action, and that then forms a base for desire, for want, right? And then once that want or desire is satisfied, there's this false allure, this false sense of joy, comfort, whatever, right? That is actually not true. It just comes because this desire has been silenced for the moment. Right? So then this forms a vicious circle. So then what is the awakening? Just like how the Buddha sat there and was able to be patient with arati, tanha and raga, right? What is it that we can employ to be patient with arati, tanha and raga as they assail us day after day, moment after moment? So that's the first watch, right? Buddha is sitting there, all this is going on, he's not moved at all. So then Mara he says, okay, now we've got to bring out the big guns. It's the second watch of the night. My daughters have tried and they failed. So if you want something done, you better do it yourself. So he goes, right? He goes himself. There's a beautiful description. Bahum sahasram abhinimmita savudanta. So he comes with 1,000 arms, right? And each arm has a very, very powerful weapon. Grime kalam udita ghora sasena mara. He's riding this elephant called Girime Kala. Giri is mountain, Mekala means hip. So when elephants are valued, their value is given to them based on the size of their head and the size of their hip. So if the hips are wide and large, the elephant fetches a lot of money because they're very good at work, they're very good at war and things like that. So Mara had the biggest elephant, called Girime. This elephant itself was something frightening, absolutely fear-provoking. Right? So he's sitting on this elephant, he's got 1,000 arms, and in each of these arms there's a powerful weapon. And then behind him he has his army, right, of, 700,000 titans and demons and asuras and all of these beings. And they're standing behind him, all of them are roaring, and his kind of commander-in-chief is this yaksha called Alaka, and he's even more fierce than Mara. So the Buddha is sitting there under this tree, and 700,000 of these beings with Mara in front and Alavaka to his right, brandishing all these weapons. And this is what's going on during the second week of the night. And the Buddha is just sitting there, he's being very patient, he's just observing all this. And as they hurl their spears and their arrows and their rocks, all of these turn into beams of light. All of these turn into flowers, and all of these turn into petals. And all of these fall at the feet of the Buddha. And this is how the second week of the night goes on. Right? So first, Mara tries to distract the Buddha using desire. That hasn't worked. So then he says, I'll use fear. Fear doesn't work either. So then he comes to the third tactic. Right? I've got to use guilt. I've got to make the Buddha feel guilty. So Mara then disguises himself as King Suddhodana, the Buddha's father, and he comes to the Buddha. And he's kind of looking old and haggard, and his face is all tear-stained, and he looks at the Buddha and he says, I know this is all very important for you, and all the spiritual quest, all that's wonderful, I respect what you're doing, but consider me, look at me. I'm old, I have so many responsibilities, I have no relief. Your half-brother Nanda is, he's a good chap, but, he's not comparable to you. And think of your mother, Prajapati Gautami, who's always pining for you, your wife, Yashodhara, your son, who's now about 6 or 7 years old. They're all waiting for you. Come back. Come, take over the kingdom. Do something of real worth. We've all felt this kind of emotional blackmail from our parents at some point or the other, or from someone, right? So guilt, right? So starting with greed, moving on to fear, now guilt. Buddha just sits there, right? And he's not moved by this. He's not going to give in to this. He's not going to engage with the sense of guilt that's coming up. Now the sun is just about to rise. Mara looks to the east and the sky is just turning this kind of pinkish red. Mara says, it's do or die. It's now or never. I've got to do something really, really effective. Right? So then he says, okay, I will try insulting the Buddha. I'll try denigrating the Buddha. So he says, oh, what do you think you're doing? I mean, you were born a prince, you couldn't hack it as a prince, right? So you left your home, you left your family, and you said you were going to go and do this kind of asceticism and find the deathless. You couldn't even do that. You started eating, and you started bathing, and you started living life in a normal way. All your compatriots, your companions, they left you and went off. You were not even successful as a samana. Now you're sitting here under this tree claiming that you will be the Buddha and you will sit in the Vajrasana. This is rubbish. You're nothing. You're no one. Look at me. On the other hand, I am the head of this powerful army. I am the Lord of the seventh heaven, the Pari-Nibanna heaven. It's literally the Lord of the seventh heaven. Right? At my command, I have all of these powerful beings. So I have to have, the Pali term is adhipatya. I have to have overlordship of the universe. And I am the powerful one. You're nothing. Am I not? And all of his generals and his army says, yes, Lord, you are the most powerful. You are the best. So Mara says, these are my witnesses. Who are yours? And this is the time the Buddha then reaches down and touches the earth. The Bhumisparsha Mudra that you see in the statue here. And he calls the Mother Earth, Dharani Mata, to be his witness. Right? And at that moment, Dharani Mata appears. And she says, Mara, this is my true son. He has achieved everything he has said he would achieve, and more. And there's this beautiful verse that really, and this appears in our evening chanting and in our morning chanting, the Buddha Viviti, Buddha Varahanta Varadadi Gunavi Yukto, where she says, this Buddha is the Buddha of supreme quality. Whatever you have said, where you claimed he was not successful, where you claimed that he was useless, he's actually the best in all of those things. And just like how the lotus opens up with the light of the sun, people's hearts will open because of the enlightenment and the knowledge that he provides. It's a beautiful line. Buddha Varahanta Varadadi Gunavi Yukto Yotabhido Hariya Puggala Yotabhido Hariya Puggala Sangasetro. And then she says, you are here with your army, right? And you want to fight the Buddha. All he's doing is he's sitting calm. He's not giving in to you. So she says, I bow down to him, who is the picture of non-contention. The word she uses is arana. Vandamahan tam aranan Varadammanetam or something. Is that right? Vandamahan tam aranan samagatato. Then Bodhesiyo sujanatam kamaram vasuro. Vandamahan tam aranan sirasa janenda. That's right. Vandamahan tam aranan sirasa janenda. This arana, this person who never engages in contention, this person who never engages in war, the most peaceful, to him I bow down my head. So she bows down her head and releases her tresses, and this then wipes away the army of Mara. And this then becomes the moment where the Buddha reaches complete and full enlightenment. Right? So when we actually look at this, what it tells us is that first 3 watches of the night, whatever was happening with the Buddha, is still an internal subjective experience. Right? It's full of knowledge, it's full of wisdom, there's no delusion there, it still remains a subjective experience. The moment he reaches out and touches the earth and says, I am part of this, I need you to come and bear witness to this. When he makes contact, when he makes that connection, that is when the internal subjective wisdom comes to fruition, finds expression. Suddha jnana karuna hi samagatattva. That's when this jnana turns into karuna, becomes compassion. That's when this is purified. And this is when the Buddha actually, the Buddha becomes the Buddha. The moment of actualization is when this internal experience gets expressed to the world outside. And of course he had to call his mom to come and protect him from bullying. So to all the moms out there, thank you very much. Right? So then this happens, and beautiful description, and this is the same description that appears when the Buddha is born, when the Buddha gets enlightened, and when the Buddha gives his first sermon, that the 10,000-fold universe, dasasahasi lokadatu, sankampi, sampakampi, sampadevi, they quaked, they tremored, right? And they were able to experience this radiant light, olaro obhaso paturahosi, this light that came and engulfed the 10,000-fold universe, this light that's brighter even than the radiance of all the celestial beings put together. This light appears in the world, right? As a sign that the Buddha has actually become the Buddha. The actualization, the moment of actualization has happened. So if our practice is always looking at the internal kind of, it's me, my practice, my samadhi, and we create this beautiful landscape within, and we're always delighting in that beautiful landscape within, there's still a fragility to that. If it does not find expression outside, if we cannot reach out and say, how may I help? How may I serve? There's no actualization of that wisdom. Right? There's no kind of outflow, there's no use, there's no... And the Buddha, his whole life has been based on bahujana hitaya, bahujana sukhaya, like for the well-being of bahujana, for all beings, for all people, and for the welfare, for the well-being, for the protection, for the safety of humanity, of all sentient beings. That has been the motto of his life. That is kind of the motto of his teaching. Right? So that's the moment when his teaching becomes actualized for himself and actualized for the world, and for Mara and his forces disappear. And then he continues teaching for 45 years, going, just walking through the Ganges Valley, meeting people, teaching them, and using a variety of anecdotes and similes and metaphors and things, employing means by which people could relate. And Lupo has always said that Lupu Cha would always do that. Like his teachings were never something that's highly philosophical. He would speak to people in terms by which they could understand. So again, that's what we have to do. So when we read a sutta, right, there's no point in trying to mold or adjust our experience to match what's written in the sutta. Right? Because that's not real, that's made up. What we have to do is find out what really works for us. Okay, these are the strategies that are mentioned, these are the teachings that are mentioned. How can I use that to give me that uju, to give me that sense of uplift? How can I personalize this? What can I take away from this? Right? It's not the other way around. Like, how can I change my experience? Okay, this is first jhana. How do I get first jhana? How do I get samadhi? Right? That's not the point. It's the other way around. Here is a teaching that says samadhi. What can I do inside so that I can experience something like that? What can I do inside that's going to move me away from suffering, take me towards happiness? Right? So then, he continues teaching, and we reach the last part of the story, which is the Pari-Nibanna of the Buddha. And so, now, right through the Buddha's cousin, the Venerable Ananda, has been his attendant. He's been his shadow. He's always with him. He's helping him out. He's managing various affairs of the Buddha. One of his responsibilities is to try to make sure that that's one of the conditions. So when he agrees to be the attendant for the Buddha, he lays out 8 conditions. Right? The rest of the Sangha, they're all desperate, to be the Buddha's attendant. The Buddha asks Ananda, will you be my attendant? Ananda says, I will, but you have to agree to my conditions. And he lays out a set of conditions. One of those conditions is that he has full access to the Buddha's calendar. Right? So he decides who goes and meets the Buddha, he decides who the Buddha meets, out of an intention of protecting the Buddha. Right, out of an intention of being of support, taking on as much load as possible so that the Buddha is free. So anyway, they've been living together, and he's been seeing the Buddha aging. So he says, Lord, now you're close to 80 years old. Your faculties seem weak. Your eyesight is troubled. Your hearing is labored. The Buddha says, yes, this is called old age. This is what's going to happen. And so then the Buddha says, okay, now we have to go towards Vaisali, and let's go to Vaisali. So they start walking. And as they're walking, they reach Vaisali and they sit down, and the Buddha then tells Ananda, 3 months from today will be the Tathagata's Pari-Nibanna. The Tathagata will cease to remain in this mortal form, in this human form, precisely 3 months from today. So there's an interesting story here. Apparently he says it once, and Ananda is just kind of listening. He says it twice, Ananda listens again. He says it the third time, and Ananda doesn't say anything immediately. And then the penny drops, and Ananda says, oh, but Lord, it's too early for you to die. Please don't leave us and go. You've got so much more to do. So many people are relying on you. Please stay back. The Buddha says, sorry, you missed your chance. I've said it 3 times. Now I've got to go. That's it. So then, later on, after the Pari-Nibanna, a lot of the monks come and accuse Ananda. You had the chance, and you let this go. And because of you, the Buddha has now attained Pari-Nibanna. We don't have a teacher. I think it was a great act of compassion on Ananda's behalf. Right? It wasn't as if it wouldn't have struck him. It's like he sees this friend, this teacher who's suffering. What's the point in asking him to remain for another, I don't know how many other eons, 500 eons or 500, whatever is mentioned. So I think it was but again, that's just my opinion. I don't mean to be heretical, but I think that was an act of great compassion on Ananda's behalf. So the Buddha makes this pronouncement in Vaisali, and Ananda tries and fails to keep the Buddha longer. So he asks the Buddha, okay, so after you, who's going to lead us? Who's going to be our teacher? And that's when the Buddha says, Attadipo viharata attasarana ananya sarana. Make yourself your refuge. Make yourself your island. Deepa is also a flame. So make yourself your flame of knowledge, your flame of wisdom. Attasarana ananya sarana. No other refuge. Because no other refuge is reliable. No other refuge is no other refuge is as reliable, right? So tap into your own strengths, tap into your own abilities, and let your heart kind of guide you through this endeavor, through this journey. And he says, Dhamma and the Vinaya, my teachings and my discipline, will be the teacher for the Sangha going forward. So then they keep walking, they go to this place called Pava, and they are invited by a blacksmith called Chunda. And Chunda the blacksmith invites the Buddha for his final meal. The Buddha goes there and he prepares a special dish called Sukara Madhava. Now there's a bit of a debate amongst the scholars and the historians now. Is this Sukara means pork, Madhava means soft. So is this soft pork? Or is this some kind of soft food that pigs like to eat? So is it some kind of mushroom? Is it like a truffle? No one knows. But anyway, there's the dish, Sukara Madhava. The Buddha looks at it and, he doesn't want to refuse it. So he says, Chunda, I will take a little, but once I eat it, please go and bury it. Let no one else partake of this particular dish. So he eats the Sukara Madhava, the rest of it is buried. And after the meal, he and Ananda start walking. The Buddha says, Ananda, we have to go to Kushinara. And by this time, this food hasn't agreed with the Buddha. So he has a lot of diarrhea, and there's blood in his stools, there's a lot of sharp pain in his abdominal region. And they're walking, and Ananda says, why? Why do you want to go to Kusinara? It's kind of remote, it's out of the way, there's nobody there. You could go to Vaisali, and then you could pass away where you could attain Pari-Nibanna, where all your followers are there, all your disciples are there. That's the capital of the Mallas. So all of these kings and so many people are going to be there. So the Buddha insists. He says, no, it is going to be Kusinara, that's where we're going to go. So they walk all the way from Pava and they reach Kusinara, and the Buddha selects a spot, and this spot has 2 sal trees. And the Buddha says, this is where the Tathagata is going to attain his Mahapari-Nibanna. And just then, there's a wandering ascetic who comes, and according to the suttas, he's 120 years old. So he comes and asks, he comes and Ananda says, what do you want? And he says, I have a doubt. I want to ask the Buddha a question. And Ananda is like, yes, but he's getting ready for Mahapari-Nibanna. He's sick, he's suffering. Do you want to ask him a question now? And Subhadra says, yes, because I know that he is the most trustworthy. I can't trust any of you guys because you guys may change something or you probably don't know. So I've got to speak with him. And then the Buddha hears this, right? And the ocean of compassion responds and he says, Ananda, send him. So this wandering ascetic goes and asks the Buddha a very, very pertinent question. He says, Lord, there are so many teachers and there are so many philosophies. All of these teachers, using their philosophies, claim to have gotten enlightened. Right? Is that the truth? What do you have to say for that? And the Buddha gives a wonderful answer. He says, look, don't worry about all that. Don't worry about the teachers. Don't worry about what they call their philosophy. Don't worry about anything. All you have to do is look at the teaching. Any teaching that has its basis, its foundation, and is compatible with the Four Noble Truths and with the Noble Eightfold Path, enlightenment is guaranteed. Any teaching that does not have its basis in the Four Noble Truths or the Eightfold Noble Path will not lead to release, will not lead to. So I think that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. So the encouragement is, once you found something that is of value, that is inspiring, kind of look at its components, look at the teaching itself, try and understand. And so again, it's also very good because in a way, again at the risk of sounding heretical, I think what the Buddha is saying is that Buddhism doesn't have the monopoly on enlightenment, right? Which is a wonderful thing to keep in mind, right? So anyway, so this monk asks the Buddha this, and the Buddha answers. This wandering mendicant asks the Buddha this, and the Buddha answers. And he recollects, and he considers this, and he plays around with it in his mind, and immediately attains full enlightenment. So, in the lifespan of the Buddha, this is the last person who attains full and complete enlightenment. And what is his name? Subhadra, which is the Dhamma name of Lupucha, Subhadra. Right? So again, a beautiful, plausible, inspiring, uplifting coincidence. Right? Lupucha has the same name as the last person who achieves enlightenment during the lifetime of the Buddha. So then the Pari-Nibanna, so Subhadra kind of bows and goes away. Ananda goes and informs all of the people that you better come because when the sun rises tomorrow, the Tathagata is going to be no more. So everyone comes, all the Mallas and all the people from Kosala and all the people from Bajji, and all the kings and all the lay people and monks and nuns and whoever is able to come, they all congregate. And as the sun rises, the Buddha is just about to breathe his last and his final teaching, which is the best teaching. He says, Vayadhamma sankhara appamadena sampadetati. Everything, all of these phenomena, all of these sankharas, Vayadhamma, they arise and they pass away. Appamadena sampadetati. Be heedful and collect what is beneficial. Okay? So, with that I end this long session of storytelling. I thought just before we finish we could just do the Anicca Sankhara chant. So, this chant is again offered in reference to the Buddha's Pari-Nibanna. So I thought the monks will chant one line and then you chant it, you will chant another line and you chant it. It's a short chant. Oh, okay.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.